Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Getting Defensive, brought to you by Gridiron Ratings. Before we get into the usual suspects that we have every week here with you, we have a special guest. As you can tell, we have Jeff on here, the founder of Gridiron Ratings. He is here to give away another free copy of the 2021 Gridiron Ratings online draft guide, as they had enough subscriptions here. So, Jeff, if you want to go ahead and do the honor here for the lucky winner.
Absolutely. I want to thank all of our subscribers. We're up to 128 now. Thank you to every single one of you. We went through and did the random draw this evening, and our winner is Ertz When Eifert.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't
Quality name.
I
love it.
That's the name. So
it's a great name.
Because they didn't have any information included with their YouTube info, I'm going to try and track them down via YouTube. We're going to give it the honest shot here. And if we can't get a hold of them by the end of the week, then we'll go ahead and draw another winner, and we'll let someone know in a separate video.
Sounds great. Well, congratulations to you, Ertz When Eifert. And hopefully you know how to get a hold of us here, or Jeff specifically. But
Absolutely. If you happen to be watching this and I can't reach you by YouTube for whatever reason, hit me on Twitter at NFL_DiMatteo or at Gridiron Rating. We'll be happy to get you squared away. We'll just have to get some info to get the draft guide out to you. With that, I'm going to duck out and let you guys take off with the show. I'll hang out in the comments and heckle y'all a little bit, though.
All right. Good. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations, Ertz.
Yep.
Well, what a way to start off a show.
Right.
One of the classic fantasy names of the past 10 years or so. But with me, as always, we have Gary, the IDP tipster. How are you doing tonight, Gary?
I'm doing really well. How you doing tonight, Craig?
I am tired. Got a 3-4 day, about 3-day-old baby at home. So that's always fun with more waking up and taking care of people and doctor appointments. But that's part of the gig, so you deal with it.
Right. If you all don't know, he just had a newborn.
Yep.
Little girl, right?
Yep, little girl, fourth girl out of 5. So my son,
Wow.
who was the oldest, has a lot of growing up and protecting to do in his future, probably. So,
yeah.
James, how's your night?
My night's good. I mean, it's barely night over here. We still got sunshine. It's only 7 o'clock, so I'm doing well, ready to jump in here.
All right, and this is sort of a continuation, our main topic tonight. We are looking at the same 2021 current as of a couple of weeks ago, sleeper, IDP, ADP. We're going over the top 100, and we're going to be telling you what we find in terms of value deeper down, or sort of guys that we feel are being underdrafted. And I know this wasn't thrown in there, so I apologize, but I did want to get your guys' thoughts on something because we do actually have some IDP news sort of here. Great. Sam Hubbard. What? Huh?
Great.
Oh, all right. I didn't hear you. All right, good.
All right.
So Sam Hubbard, 4 years, $40 million. He re-signed, or it's an extension actually, with the Bengals. And then similar but a different position on the defensive line, Jonathan Allen got a $72 million, I believe it's also a 4-year contract extension to stay with the football team or whatever their name may be going forward past this year. But do you guys have any immediate thoughts? Good, bad, indifferent to either one of those? Gary, we can start with you.
I'll do Sam Hubbard. I think that Sam Hubbard is really going to have a breakout season. I mean, Carlos Dunlap's gone. He was banged up last year, so he didn't really perform to his normal level, I think, as he had flashed previously. And I think it's well worth the money. I think that hopefully there's a lot of nice incentives in there because I really expect him to take the next step. I can't call him a breakout, but I think he's going to take the next step, and he's going to be one of those top DLs, hovering around the Bosa brothers at the moment, at least comparably this year. I like him a lot.
James,
from a fantasy perspective, yeah.
Yeah, I'll take the other one here. I'll talk about Jonathan Allen. I think he's a very unsexy player when it comes to IDP. Very much a guy who's kind of clogging up the middle and producing numbers, but no one really loves him. And I think there's going to be, over the next few years, a lot of people who want to see him out. I want to see a young, hotter player take that prime role. And I think this payment by the football team says exactly what it needs to say, which is he's not going anywhere short term or kind of probably long term. I don't know the exact amount of cap hit and how it's all spread out in terms of dead money and whatnot, but I'm assuming he's got a 2-year deal. And with that being said, he's going to be there and he's going to eat up space. And I think he's just going to be quietly another person of value.
I didn't think he was that old, but maybe I'm wrong.
He's just.
I see him as an old guy in my mind.
Right.
Yeah, he just turned 26, so he's going to be heading on the downside of his career, probably at the back half of that deal. And there's going to be a lot of young people who are going to get drafted on that Washington team. And anyone who goes to that defensive side of the ball or on that pass rushing side, they're going to be people who fantasy owners want to see get snaps. And I think Jonathan Allen is just going to be very plateaued, and he's just going to sit and be a very solid real-life piece, but a very mediocre fantasy piece. And I don't think he's going anywhere. So it's less about me loving Jonathan Allen and more about me loving what Washington sees in him.
Yeah, I didn't see anything on his contract either, but it wouldn't surprise me, to your point, if it's more front-loaded, because they're going to have to re-sign. Presumably they're going to want to re-sign Sweat, and Chase Young is going to get a boatload of money at some point down the road. So it would make more sense to have them more front-loaded. We'll see if that pans out here. Yep. To your point, Gary, I agree about Hubbard. 6 and then 8.5 sacks, 7 and then 10 tackles for a loss, and last year was just a lost cause for so many people with Hubbard. But I do think we'll talk about him tonight, maybe not, but value a little bit right now in comparison to what it seems like he's capable of based on last year.
Yep. People are forgetting about him and Hunter. Hunter is slipped down. Of course, I know James is not going to, agree with me about Hunter up in Minnesota, but, I think he's worth a little bit more than what, we got to remember what they used to do at times. And both these guys are young. I expect them both do well this year.
Alrighty. So getting into our main topic here tonight, again, we were looking at sort of the top 100 here in terms of the sleeper IDP, ADP, and we're going over guys that we think are values compared to what we had gone over last week, which are guys being overrated. So, Gary, we're going to jump to you, and these don't have to be in any specific order of, the guy you think has the most value or anything, but what's a name that jumped right off the page to you out of the guys on that list?
So you're talking completely out of the entire ADP? We're not just saying it's a top?
Yep, it's the top 100. Yep.
Is it? All right. I just wanted to make sure because I got one itching to talk about, probably revisit this down the road, right? We're going to keep doing these.
Yeah, we can, but if there's someone that was a little bit farther down there that you think was a great value, there's no problem going ahead and talking about him either. Because we aren't throwing this list out there for the viewers or anything, but we can give them an idea about where he was at for someone else.
Or I could just go cheesy and talk about Sam Hubbard again for a second here. All right, so he's my calculations, he's going around, or what we have here is round 65th overall. He is the DL12, but I think I have more of a problem with who is being picked over him. We've got a rookie pay. Okay, there's a few. We've got Xavier McKinney before him. I think it's not so much as in the DL that he's at, but in the overall ADP. I think that, I would take Hubbard and get that top 10 DL because there's not a lot of them. In my opinion, he's top 10 this year. And I would do it over players such as, Trey Henderson, Keneal O'Neal, any of these rookies that are mixed in here around this range. McKinney, Howard, DP period. I would definitely be taking him over a DP. So I could see myself, personally, I think that I have no problem. So, and overall, he's around the 65th. I believe he should be within, I don't have a problem within the top 45, somewhere in that range. Probably a round or two more than what he's getting drafted in a standard sized league.
Any thoughts on him?
Yeah. I was going to say, Gary very much likes Sam Hubbard, and I don't disagree with him, but I think his rankings about accurate. When you include all of the people who are multi-eligible, I'm seeing Hubbard as the number 22 defensive lineman eligible player, which is about where he belongs. I've got him slightly higher than that, slotted a little bit above, around 19. And, that can give or take a few because everyone in that range is about equal, in my opinion. I like him. I think he's a quality player. I think if you draft him and you need to reach a little bit on that ADP, I'm okay with that. But he's not somebody I'm out here hawking and saying, what's going on here? Why is it so low? Like some of the guys on my list. I think he's fine. You can move up a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal.
You know what? To blow his horn a little bit more, he's kind of reminds me of TJ Watt a little bit, but from a different perspective as a defensive end. And I'm not saying he is talented as Watt is, but if you look at it, his ceiling in combined tackles, it's up there, and that's something besides sacks that carries Watt. So I'm hoping with him being healthy this year that he can comparably take a jump in this situation. Of course, his value is nowhere near Watt's because Watt has the LBDL designation in sleeper. But, still, though, I wouldn't have any trouble wanting to, if things slip by, depending on the format, I would grab Hubbard and let him anchor my DL spot for me with no problem. Just wanted to add that, James.
I don't believe in him that much, but
right.
We've said what we've said.
Yep. What you got for us, I guess?
Yeah, you can go ahead, James, with the first guy you want to talk about. Yeah,
I'll hit it off. There were kind of 5 big kind of wows for me, and all of them were about equal kind of in terms of their ADP and sleeper versus where I think I have them rated. But one of them just really jumped off the page, and that would be Myles Jack. He's going right now as linebacker number 30. And I'm just confused. I don't understand what's going on there. I think he easily is a top 15 linebacker. If you want to push top 10, I'm not there, but I won't hate you for saying that. And he's going 30th, and I'm just all sorts of confused. I understand Urban Meyer's there. He's going to come in with a new scheme, and everything's going to change, except Myles Jack's still going to play and still going to rack up tackles and still going to have tons of turnovers. So I'm just really confused and perplexed here. He's easily a top 24 linebacker. If you want to drop him down to 16th, 18th, 20th, I probably will start arguing with you, but I won't go ham. You want to drop him anywhere below that, I'm just frankly confused. And this one was really one that just kind of stuck out to me, and I said, wow, I don't really understand where it's coming from, and we're going to correct this, so anyone who's listening, go draft him.
Gary, I know you have thoughts on Myles Jack, too.
I'm perfectly fine where he's at. He's got a little bit of risk to him. I don't have an argument. I mean, I enjoyed his production last year when he was out there and he was kicking some butt, but he's just, I don't know. I think I'm all right this year, taking him right about where he's at.
Well, I guess it sort of leaves me as the tiebreaker here, and I'd pick up the paper and show it, but I know that doesn't make for a great show. He was the first name I had listed on here, too. Top 30 just seems too low for me. I mean, yes, it's within the realm of possibility, but when you look at sort of what he's done previously, 2 of the past 3 years, he's been over 100 combined, over 70 solo. And yeah, he doesn't get you a whole lot of big plays, but when you're looking probably for a number 2 defensive or linebacker on your team, rather, a guy that's going to get you that many tackles, he's going to be on the field, and that team is just going to have, once again, I think, a lot of opportunity to be able out there to get plays for that defense. Him and Schobert are really the guys, and I think they're both good, but Jack, to me, is a better value on here. So I agree with James.
Where did you have James, or where did you have Myles Jack at? DB what? Or LB what?
Combined on the list, it's 30.
Yeah. On the list, he's all the way down at 30th when you combine everyone who's DB and DL eligible, along with those kind of hybrid LB DB guys. So basically anyone who qualifies at linebacker.
I switched over to LB 30. I was looking. I didn't see him there. That's what we used to call him. It doesn't really matter because I'll stick with that. Never mind. Just trying to get on the same page. Yeah, I'm tired, guys. But we'll get this done. So
yeah, and you know, I just want to point out one of the comments in the chat where they're asking, you know, will Jack stay healthy? And my response to that is it's as likely as anyone else. I don't think he has any sort of serial issues with the same sort of, you know, ligament, soft tissue problems. He's been a guy who's gotten hurt, but lots of guys get hurt in the NFL. There's no reason for me to look at him and go, oh, health risk. Let's drop him 15 spots. That doesn't make sense. If you want to knock him and try and find someone you feel is a little bit healthier, fine, but you're knocking him 1 or 2 spots, not all the way down to 30th. It's just perplexing. And just also to piggyback off of what Craig said, you know, this Jacksonville team is going to be better this year than they were last year. So while Jack isn't a high turnover creator, he's probably going to have more opportunities than less opportunities, and that's good. So bye.
Yeah, and, you know, Jack played in all 16 games the first 3 years of his career. You know, it's not like he was like been in the league for 5 years and been missing 4 or 5 games every year. If you were seeing that sort of a situation like Derwin James where the guy just seems snake bitten or whatever the case, maybe then you start knocking him down more, to James's point. But, you know, just a couple of years of things happening to him isn't enough to, I agree, drop him, you know, 15 spots seems a bit egregious.
The first thing that actually, now that I'm on the same track with you guys, the first thing that stands out is all these rookies going before him. Yeah. So, I mean, unless these are some really deep. So, yeah, we take them completely out of the picture. There shouldn't be any DBs or rookies ahead of them unless they're like the top 10 possible safeties on the board. So now that I've caught up with you, I agree. He is way too low.
Took a bit, but we came to a consensus.
Hey, we're live. I can change my mind.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
Yeah, yeah.
When you get new information, you should be reviewing.
See, I'm sitting here talking about overalls. Next thing I know, I hear James bringing up LB this, and I'm like, I'm old. I can't see this on this chart. But I can't see it all, but I'm working on it, folks. We're getting there.
So, Gary, who's your second name you want to go over here? Since James and I both have Miles.
So I'm going to talk about overall, and he's going to screw me up with the designation. Jesse Bates. To me, I mean, he's going 34th overall. It says no. See, it says DB6. See, I'm just confused, but I think that I would definitely take him a little higher than where he's going at 34th. He's definitely, for me, even without that designation of LBDB, he's a guy that I would love to have anchor my starting DBs anytime, and would definitely take him over Jarrell Peppers, Devin Bush, Michael Parsons, rookie, Jordan Poyer, Chamond Edmonds, even him. I definitely think that he is a top 3, top 5 type dude. He's going to see a lot of production. So, I mean, I guess your value, you can look at it one way. If you're actually getting him that late in drafts, then you're really doing well because he probably should be quite a few picks before then. I would take him over. I mean, I'm looking at Montel Sweet. You know, he's only a designated DL there, so he has no bonus. He's coming off the strong side for Washington. I don't see why I wouldn't want a top 5 option over him particularly. Again, even if this was talking dynasty, Jesse Bates is not going nowhere. He's young, and they funnel that production towards him. So he would definitely, even Brian Burns, Fitzpatrick, I mean, there's quite a few here. I believe that I have him ranked higher than Derwin James, if I remember right. So, and Derwin James is coming in around 24th overall. That's how I was kind of shocked to see him that far. I thought he would have a lot more love coming in to this year.
Yeah, and, you know, Gary loves his Bengals defenders, clearly. And while I'm not all in on the Sam Hubbard train, I agree with everything Gary just said about Jesse Bates. I've got him as my
That's the
number
only
1
two,
DB.
man. That's the only two. I promise that is the only two.
Yeah, and, Bates is getting underdrafted, and this kind of brings in a good question, just more of a philosophical question than anything when it comes to what is underdrafted. So he's the DB8 when you factor in the two guys who are LB eligible with Jeremy Chin and Jabril Peppers. And I've got him as my number 5 DB, but I've got him, like Gary, going far higher in his overall ADP than where he currently sits. And so is he underdrafted? Well, it's only 3 slots, but it's also a lot of slots, and it's at the top end of the draft where value matters a lot more.
Yep.
So all the guys I'm targeting are people who I just see as being very grossly underdrafted, but are they going to give you the type of reward Jesse Bates does if you take him a little bit earlier? That's a good question, and I don't really know the answer. All I do know is Jesse Bates is underdrafted. He's better than Jordan Poyer. I've got him ahead of Peppers, even though Peppers is that hybrid player. Got him ahead of perpetually injured Derwin James, because even though I'm not a guy who believes in injuries being forever, I am a guy who believes in Jesse Bates, so I'll knock Derwin James below him for that. And yeah, everything Gary said is true. You have to go and buy somebody, and Jesse Bates is going to be the playmaker. There's no linebackers out there. I love Jermaine Pratt, but not that good. Jesse Bates is going to just get those tackles, get that production, and a DB, that's very valuable.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep it succinct. My thoughts are basically the same. I'd sit here and, argue back and forth and redraft, this guy over him or not. But he's a little bit too low if he's sitting in that 8 range. I agree. He definitely has top 3 upside, and I'm good with him in the top 5. But if you're looking at this list that we're going off of, a lot of the names that were mentioned going above him, I'm not a fan of that. So sort of James's philosophical point about what is undervalued, if he's going after guys that you would not take before him in a large sample size, I would call that undervalued. So I agree. James, your second guy here.
Yeah, I'll stick with the DB theme and go with the one guy who kind of stuck out to me in the DB department, and that's Chuck Clark. He is all over the place in terms of on the field production, but in his ADP, he's down at 31. He's a guy who's not going in your top 2.5 DBs, and that's kind of confusing. He's been an excellent portion of that Baltimore secondary. There hasn't been much change there. They're going to get tested. They're going to be in close games. He's going to be able to make plays, and he's just sitting way too low. I, again, have him around DB 15, and he's at DB 30. That's half of what I think his actual value is, and it's just too low. He's not a guy I love by any means, but I was expecting his ADP to come in 18th, 14th, 20th, somewhere around there. And when I saw 31, he jumped out almost as much as Miles Jack. Is just, why? I don't really understand why there's so much deviation here.
Right. I have no argument. You've covered it.
I agree. Chuck Clark was one of the first guys a few years ago. I remember paying attention to Gary. He was all over Chuck Clark a few years ago, big name, and when picked him up off of that advice, and it worked out. And hey, now we're sitting here talking about him. So small world. It
was he was one of my 3 breakout players for the year, if I remember right.
Yep.
And he delivered. And I actually called that like the prior season when he started taking over. As soon as who was it? Tony Jefferson went down or something.
I think so. Yeah.
And then I made love Chuck. I agree 100%. Kind of a bias agree.
It's all right. It's all right.
That's all right. All right.
I don't have anything to add to that either. I was surprised that he was like, number 96 or something like on this 100 list. I mean, that's just crazy low to me as well. So, one of my guys I wanted to mention, and this is another where it's not a player I necessarily love, but I just felt he's way too low on here. Looking at the combined linebackers, DBs, DL position eligible players, Shaq Thompson came in at 47, and I don't think he's going to necessarily repeat his past 2 years because they did add some pieces. Now, Denzel Perryman is not someone that I'm very high on, but he is another body there that can get tackles, Reddick is going to be there, although he's sort of a different kind of linebacker. But when I'm looking, and again, he's very low on this list overall that we have here. He's in that bottom quarter. Even just some of the people that we're talking about around here. Trevon Morig, he's a rookie. And I know that's a different position, but I'm not going to take him there. And if you're talking about linebackers farther up the line here, there's just guys that I'm not a big fan of from that linebacker position. I know, okay, if you're in balanced scoring, JPP maybe, but not as a linebacker, as a defensive lineman, I'd be all right with. And really, even if you're just looking in that area, Cameron Curl's another guy that I like, but I'm not going to take him over. Is that he's that sort of that second safety in the defense in Washington, probably with Landon.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are giving enough credit to Landon Collins.
Yeah,
he didn't have a good year last year. He got hurt, but man, I would speak of Landon Collins previously in the same breath I would Jamal Adams previously to last year. I mean. Collins is not that old either. I'm pretty sure he's only hovering around that 26 years old too. So I love what Curl did last year. It really was a bonus for them, and it's going to be a bonus this year if he's playing free safety or wherever he is on the field, because he's a tackling machine. But you got to remember Collins is there. So, you got to give some of these older dudes that seem like they've been in the league forever, they're not as old as you might think. And my range of somebody peaking, I don't think that somebody even starts peaking in the NFL until they're around 25 to 26 years old, personally. I don't think they've peaked and maxed out until they're 27 or 28. But that might be that upper nonchalant, stuck kind of players that are stuck in my head too. So I know you don't feel the same, James, that you think that I think you, from what I've heard you say, you believe their peak age is more in that low mid-20s.
Not necessarily. It obviously depends. Overall, I do think peak age is right around like 26. But when you're talking about elite talent, there's a lot of longevity there relative to your average football player. So when I look at a guy like Shaq Thompson, I agree with everything you just said, Gary. He's someone who's just going to be very solid, just like Landon Collins, who people think is just falling off the face of the earth because he got hurt, even though he's on an elite defense and Cameron Curl played well. Landon Collins will play. And so will Shaq Thompson. Like Craig said, Denzel Perryman doesn't scare me. He's massively underrated in terms of where he's getting drafted. If you look 20 slots higher, which when you're talking ADP at a position is a gigantic space, you've got Xavier Collins at 26, Bradley Chubb at 27, Jamin Davis at 28, Foyce Oluokun at 29. I'll take Shaq Thompson over all four of those guys in a standard redraft. If you want to talk dynasty, okay, I understand Davis and Collins and whatnot, but right. Shaq Thompson ain't that old, and he's going to produce, and he's fallen into this category of, he's not going to be your LB number one overall. Let's, throw him by the wayside because his ceiling isn't gigantically high. Well, the reality is his floor is really high as well. So why don't you just take him, roll with him as your LB2, and just crush, especially when he's down there at LB 47. That's way too low. Agree with everything you guys have said.
Gary, we're back to you.
Let's see. I had one here.
Any more Bengals on your list?
I'm telling you. I got to read this one. I got one that I just do not completely understand. And, it's at the bottom of my list here. 153rd overall, Nick Kowalski. What's his name?
Kowalski.
Yeah, the Oakland Raiders starting middle inside linebacker. I don't understand this at all. Not only is right now he's kind of towards the bottom of my list, I believe. I'm seeing he's LB 50. Is that correct? I guess. And we've got players, all those rookies that went over him, but we've got, Adrian Amos, Javon Kinlaw, Josh Sweet, for heaven's sakes, he's a third DL guy, rotating defensive end for Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. Now, my defense for him is simple. The guy was hurt last year. He got hurt early. He didn't do much but get to, combined tackles. He had a nice average. He played well enough that in deeper formats, he was on the field. If you had to start 3 or 4, he'd be in your starting lineup. He had some decent consistency going on. Coming back healthy, I expect better combined tackle numbers. Not huge, but I think that the one thing that we're going to see is if he's healthy and he's acclimated himself to their scheme, there's going to be a little bit more potential to make some plays and get some interceptions, force some fumbles, maybe throw in some sacks. I don't think that the way they started out last year after he got hurt, I don't think they put him into a full-blown go sick him role, with a pec injury that they thought at first was going to end his season. Not his career, folks, his season. So I really think that's a regis, or if I'm using that term wrong, idea that, Michael Kaiser is going 131st, over him. And Michael Kaiser might not even be on the field this year. He's got Ernest Jones, the rookie, on his butt, who's also down there by Nick, that I think should be a little bit higher up here, but it's a rookie, so I don't want to get James all stirred up. We got Javondre Campbell way ahead of him. I don't understand why he's that low. I think that people are underestimating what he'll bring to the table healthy this year.
Yeah, this is kind of a fun catch-22 for me because I don't believe in him at all. I'm not a fan. I think he's going to probably lose his job. That said, I think he's very underdrafted right now. I don't like the guy. I don't want him on my rosters. I'd rather invest elsewhere. But also, when you have such a great discounted price for a starting middle linebacker on a team that can produce, you got to go and buy. And you know what? I can be wrong. Gary can be wrong. All of us can be wrong. What we do is we play in the odds of percentages that we're right. So I think Kwiatkowski's going to fail a little bit more than Gary does, but we both agree there's a probability of massive profit here, so you should go and invest. Agree with Gary. Again, it's kind of weird to say I don't like a player, but I agree he's underdrafted, and that's where we're at.
So out of curiosity, what do you see the scenario then? Do you think Corey Littleton bounces back so much that it just pushes Nick off the chart?
I think Corey Littleton bounces back in the sense that Nick and Littleton are splitting and it's an ugly fantasy situation, whereas in real life it's going to be just playing the freshest man as opposed to playing the best man and the guy who just can rack up volume. It's going to be a Gruden cycle of just guys and bodies and in and out and subbing and subs packages and all that not so fun stuff from a fantasy side. But again, I don't know John Gruden. I don't know how right I am on this prediction. Gary could be completely right. So when you have such a cheap price for a guy who's got obvious upside, yeah, I think investing is a smart decision.
No, I was just curious. Thanks.
I agree to your point, Gary. He's a guy that I think just is low on a lot of lists like this when you're looking at ADP because he isn't flashy. He's not a big name. He's sort of more one of those guys that wins with high effort, lunch pail guy who just goes out there and earns his spot, whether he should be starting or not. Everyone wasn't, not everyone, because clearly Gary wasn't, but a lot of people, I'd say the majority were in love with someone like Corey Littleton when he was going to be going there. Oh, look what he did with the Rams.
And I was warning the shit out of it last year.
I know.
Y'all, did you catch me last year? I spent a lot of time in the offseason. Don't be surprised if Nick outproduces Littleton and Littleton struggles, because being outside of that whole Rams defensive scheme that was – I believe Littleton's undrafted, folks. He was groomed for that job with the Rams, and I think that when it was just totally weak side linebacker position playing in Oakland just threw him for a loop, because whatever happened to him, it hit hard. And we had Noro which Noro has been like one of those journeymen at Oakland for a long time. And he has had some flashes and he's replaced people and played well and produced, but Gruden keeps pushing him to the back, They actually only just re-signed him this year for, I don't think it was a big contract either. They re-signed him, brought him back in. And I personally, I want Corey Littleton to get better and do better, but he graded pretty damn poorly last year. Not talking IDP, I'm talking just in general play. And Nick held his own. Noro was okay, if I remember right, but I think Littleton is going to be the guy that's really going to be on the hot seat. He better come, I haven't looked, don't quote me, folks. I haven't looked at these new camp reports or, where they blow the steam up your butt. But I'm just telling you, I'm getting all the Nick that I can and avoiding Corey Littleton. I am not a believer in that sense. Not enough to go drafting him.
Didn't believe in him last year and still not this year. So keep it in mind, folks.
Prove it to me.
James, who's your number 3 guy for tonight?
Yeah, I think we kind of have a reoccurring theme here, which is there's a lot of undervalued linebackers, and investing in one early might not be the greatest decision when you can take your opportunity cost and go grab a defensive lineman or a DB, because we're not really complaining about how anyone's massively undervalued there. And I'll continue that trend, and I'll say Anthony Walker. I'll go with my hometown guy, my Cleveland Brown. Yeah, it's Anthony Walker. Not a name that lights up anyone's eyes and says, wow, I love the way this guy plays. Frankly, probably not that many people really know who he is outside of deeper IDP players. But he's going in, and he's going to be that guy in the middle to produce in the Cleveland Brown system. And the Cleveland Brown system, if there's anything they've been good at over the years, which is very, very few things, it's producing a linebacker, getting a guy who's IDP playable. You had Joe Schobert, you had Andre Davis, you had DeQuell Jackson. They produce. Now, none of that's really that relevant to Anthony Walker, since none of the schemes that those guys played in are what he's playing in, but he is playing in an elite defense that's going to funnel everything to the middle because no one can pass deep because they've got great corners, they've got great safeties, they've got great pass rushing. He's going to be a guy who gets volume by default, and he's also actually pretty good. So I absolutely love him. He's down there at linebacker number 50. He's barely in this top 100, and he shoots up probably to about half that on my board. He's around linebacker 25. He's a guy who very easily at linebacker 25 can turn you a very nice profit, let alone down at linebacker 50. Get this guy on your roster. He's a diamond in the rough that's already been excavated and is out of the ground, and everyone can see how shiny he is. So get him on your roster sooner rather than later, because his ADP will be going up barring injury. There's no way anything bad is happening to Anthony Walker outside of a mass reduction in playing time, which in theory can happen to anyone, but it's not going to happen.
No. I know you've touched on him before too. What are your thoughts on him this year?
Yeah, that's me and James have been on Walker all year. I love it. And yeah, I think they're under. And the first guy, and I hate to change the topic because I agree with him, but then, what's funny is the first guy that pops into mind that I could say possibly is getting the same treatment is Okereke and for the Colts, the guy that's replacing Walker in the middle of that over there. So I believe I'm looking here. I'm getting in the 140s. You've got.
That's all right.
What?
Yeah, go ahead. Go deeper. If you got names, we're not going to stop you.
I mean, he's another one. You got Javon Kinlaw you got Amos, you got Cameron Hayward maybe, but just he's so far down on the list. He's outside of that top 100, and I know the rookies are really screwing it up. People are going with Marcus May a full round ahead of him. It just doesn't make any sense. It's all in the value. Maybe it's the formats on Sleeper. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more as the season goes on. But I mean, I'm looking at Drew Greenlaw down here under Carl Lawson, Jonathan Allen, Eric Wilson. I'm not thinking Eric Wilson might be productive by default in Philadelphia, but I definitely am not taking Eric Wilson 2 to 3 rounds ahead of either Walker or Okereke. Not in my opinion, but maybe I'm just stuck on something. What do you guys think?
I hate the Colts defense. We've been over this many times. Can't stand them. And I agree. I think that someone's going to get tackles there.
Yeah.
And I think he's the most likely guy to do it. Again, it's kind of like Wyakowski. There's lots of players out here who are linebackers who are going to get production because they are there and they have to have production because someone's going to tackle the guy. There's not 80-yard runs every play. And I don't love Bobby Okereke's great natural skill set. I think he's just a guy player. He's a jag. He'll be in and out relatively fast. But in a redraft league or in a league where you can flip guys because it's active, go and invest in him because his price is so low. Right now, rookie prices are up so high. Veteran, boring, not so great guys are so low. And when they produce a few times, those prices will flip-flop. And you want to go and buy the people who are low and sell them high, and then buy the guys who were high when they're at low peak value. And it's a broken record that I say probably every single podcast, but now is not the time to buy rookies. Now is the time to sell the hell out of them because they're more than likely not going to return what their value is today at the end of the season. Some guys will, but most guys won't.
Especially in redraft leagues. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this next name for me, it might get Gary fired up here based on last conversation we had last week, Thursday, going over the Jets. But when you're looking at it, Quentin Williams on here is defensive line number 27 combined. Based on what he's shown with nothing around him previously and what I think is going to be a much improved Jets defensive line, just defense in general, although they were all right last year. I think that's too low for him, and there's guys on this list that are around him, just if we're talking defensive linemen, that I am not going to be taking above him. Personally, I'm not going to take Chris Jones right now ahead of him, who's the one directly ahead of him, especially with the whole Frank Clark thing going on. It's more attention on Jones. Josh Allen, I know he had that great 1 year, and then last year was kind of a lost year, but I still need to see another instance out of it for him, especially with, they got Chase on. We got to see if they're going to have someone productive across from him. Even other positions. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm not taking Donovan Wilson over him with those linebacking core that they have in front of him. There's just a lot of guys on this list that I'm not taking over Quentin Williams. If you're separating this out, and I know it isn't for sleepers, interior lineman, he just shoots up, or defensive tackle specific, even to my number 2 guy. So I know generally you aren't taking defensive tackles crazy high, but that's just too low for me for him.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he matches up, I think, in massive parallels to DeForest Buckner. And DeForest Buckner's just been hanging around the top 10 for a very long time. And I think that's where Quentin Williams is going to be. So, yeah, he's massively underrated. He's someone on my honorable mentions list to go and talk about. So I'm glad Craig brought him up because I echo everything he said. Go draft him. If you want to draft somebody late and get somebody who's got a lot higher value probability than anyone else around him, go draft Quentin Williams.
You said it, right? Buckner's hanging around in the top 10 everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Not on here. 36th overall is what I'm showing with Brian Burns, Montell Sweet, quite a few linebackers, all of them. Even Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa are hanging around that 12 and 13. Give me Buckner. I'll take him if he would fall to me towards, like, say, the 11th or 12th pick and on sleeper. And give him to me. He'll anchor my defensive line for the entire season, and I won't blink an eye. I just don't understand. And I trust him way more than I ever trust Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa at this point. I don't get it. And again, Montez Sweet is a great young guy there in Washington, but why would he be going over Buckner. I almost question if I'm looking at this correctly. He should just be up there, even amongst the LBDB or the LBDL designated guys. He should still be up there. That's crazy to me. Distracting, I know. I apologize.
No problem.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Yep. I know we're getting close to our time limit here, Gary. Do you want to wrap it up here, or do you want to go through another one?
No, make him come back. We'll talk some more, folks. We're keeping these things to a 45-minute level or lower. So do your thing, man.
Yeah, just if you want to find us and ask any questions online, you see our Twitter handles on the screen here. Go check us out. Make sure you're following Gary and James. And also, you saw it at the start of the show, go to enter the 2021 Gridiron Ratings Online Draft Guide Contest. You get another, I think you said you're at 128, so you're looking for another like 22 or something.
Something like that. That's not a lot. Every 25 folks we're giving one away, and you'll always be in the pool. Just because you've been in the pool of people, you just got to be subscribing. That's it, folks. That's it. Get to it. Thanks.
And go ahead and put a goofy name out there to give Jeff some trouble tracking you down if you want to have a little bit of fun.
Yep.
But from all of us here tonight, thank you for tuning in. Gary will be back with it's Trip and maybe someone else on Thursday night.
Yep. Actually, I've got Trip's going to make his debut with us for the every Thursday night show. And then I got JJ Warner. You can find him on Twitter. He's going to be stopping in. And hopefully Justin Barnes is going to make this one. And we're going to cover the entire Miami defense. So, I'm glad you reminded me to mention that.
But thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Good night, folks.